So I like that about T'Challa. And before I get to my last example, I also wanted to talk about this sort of different approach where like manhood and masculinity can be very powerful, but look very different from one culture to the next, one situation to the next, and one person to the next. And so, I feel like Maximus, for example, from Gladiator, he's the quintessential, perfect example of a masculine man. He does have these, what we would describe as feminine qualities, in terms of his, compassion, awareness, creativity. These are all feminine qualities. But largely he's got a very masculine way about him. He's very focused. He's got, very goal, just like Killmonger does. But unlike Killmonger, Maximus has these other softer elements that make him a well-rounded whole man, rather than somebody who's not embodying that energy, somebody who is just focused on the one thing and doesn't care about anything else. So Maximus is a great example of a very masculine man. I think T'Challa is a great example of a very balanced man, right? He's got very soft and widely conscious elements of his manhood. And he, like I said before, he's also able to be focused and narrow and like if you're firing an arrow, it's important to be able to narrow your focus, right? So he's able to do that when he needs to. And so that's very balanced. And then the last example of a man that I wanted to talk about was Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon series. And I like Hiccup because he's sort of on the opposite end of Maximus. I feel like Hiccup, his strengths are almost all in his soft power and in his relationships. So he is so good at building connections and so attentive to those needs and so good at nourishing and watering his garden that it literally makes everyone around him stronger. And so, because of this way of doing things, his people end up living better quality of life than they had ever lived before. They're able to do things they could never do before, right? Go places they could never go before. And all of this is built on his excellent feminine manhood that is focused mostly on relationships and well-being and people and flow, and considerably less on things like structure, tradition, so on and so forth. And so because he's not so preoccupied with that and he plays to his strengths, you see that he's an excellent, powerful leader because of this. And so I really like Hiccup for that reason. And I like that you can see that like the feminine end of the spectrum is I take care of everyone. I'm very aware of the big picture and so on and so forth. On the other end of the spectrum is I got me, I can take care of business and I can narrow my focus and I can be solid as a rock if I need to be, and I can gain clarity out of noise, right? So each of these is good and we can find ourselves for a lot of reasons on, somewhere in the middle a lot. And that's sort of what I wanted to get at is